The last thing we learned about was the change in hierarchy of Shlomo Melech. Shlomo Melech, although he's so young, he's very poised. After given instructions by his father in his last will of testimony, David told Shlomo what things have to be done. Remember, Shlomo is very young. He starts as a king at the age of 12 years old only, as Chazal explained to us. And at the same time, David, with his experience in life, and with all the difficulties, David sees that there are two characters, two images that were one who was a star, yet had faults, and he was the minister of the army, chief of staff, and his name is Yoav. He can't continue to foil, to interfere in the leadership, and therefore the clear instructions are made. You make sure you bring about the passing away of him, and it was done. Thereafter, in Pasuk 35, well, maybe we'll go just back one Pasuk. Vayitera melech et Benayo ben Yoyada tachtav latzava, v'tzadok hakohen natan hamelech tachar Eviatar. We see our change in role, and we should really ask a question. Hasn't Yoav, who is the nephew of David, the first cousin of Shlomo, hasn't he been off of the ranks? Why do we have to be told that Benayo is instead of who? Yoav. Instead of Yoav. So maybe there's room to understand, and there are commentaries that say that, wow, even during this beginning time of the new ruling of Shlomo, still who had a name as a leader? Yoav. Because only here are we learning that Benayo is taking his place. That means until now, Yoav was the minister of the army, which is an eye-opener in my little understanding. It's because Shlomo was given clear instructions. Bring about the passing away, the death of Yoav. He took the law into his own hands. He killed Avner ben Ner, and he killed Asael, and so on and so forth. Yet, we can still understand that Shlomo had some flexibility. Okay? I don't know, in the color prism, is everything black and white, or there's gray? Here, you're wearing a gray shirt today. There's a gray area. Things are not often black and white. A former student was calling me up. He must have studied about 8 or 9 years, then maybe. No, he studied here 12 years ago, 13 years ago. And he wants he's complaining, why hasn't everyone changed their real spectrum of values and gone to tradition, nationalism? I told him, patience, slow, things don't work so fast. Here also we see that maybe right now, after the death of Yoav, is someone taking his place, which is showing flexibility on the side of the leadership of Shlomo. Shlomo's making decisions, he's putting them into execution, yet it doesn't happen right away. A second point I wanted to bring out, who is the new Kohen Gadol here? What is his name? Tzadok. Who is he replacing? Eviatar. Why is he replacing Eviatar? Who did Eviatar side with in the revolution of the son of David, of Adoniah? He sided with Adoniah. That's the wrong thing to do, of course. Now, Eviatar had a lot of good things, as we learned, as it states here before as well. But I want to just bring to our understanding.
Sorry, short question. Both Tzadok and Eviatar are from Pinchas?
Oh, so that's exactly what I wanted to share with you. Kohen Gadol. Moshe's brother Aaron was the Kohen Gadol. Aaron gave birth to how many sons? 4. 2 died in the crisis of the making of the tabernacle on the 8th day. We're left with 2, and their names are
Elazar and
Itamar. The Kohen Gadol line goes through the name Elazar. From Aaron to Elazar. What is Elazar's son that becomes Kohen Gadol? Pinchas. It continues and continues until the appearance of Eli, the last Kohen Gadol in the Mishkan, the tabernacle in Shiloh. and then it's taken away. When is it taken away? It's appearing right now. We're going back, if I'm not mistaken, we're going back to Elazar. How are we going back to Elazar? When did it shift to the house of Itamar? When did it shift to the house of Itamar? Anyone know? Huh? There was somewhere a shift to eat. What? I'm trying to understand. I don't see it right now. I thought I put it in writing. What?
Maybe it's recorded in Divrei Hayamim.
I'm trying to think. I don't remember now definitively, but if I remember mistaken, it moved somewhere to the house of Itamar, and now it's coming back to Elazar. But where did it break? That I didn't see. I'm going to look it up, Yizat Hashem, and we'll share with this tomorrow, God willing. What, you saw somewhere? You saw? No. Right now I want to get back to the psukim that we have. If in the event I have another understanding, I'll share it with you. Now, with this knowledge, two positions have been exchanged. The Kohen Gadol and the Minister of the Army. As we continue, we go to the next issue, and that is Shim'i. The instructions of King David before he passed away. The same Shim'i ben Gera, from the tribe of Benjamin, he cursed David, not once. And David showed compassion, he showed mercy. He didn't take the law into his hands. But right now he gave what? Instructions to Shlomo before he passed away, that Shim'i ben Gera has to be taken care of. Why? Because now, if you remember, who were the supporters of David's side when Adoniyahu was making a rebellion? There was one name there, and that was Shim'i. So what's going on? Could Shim'i ben Gera, one of the supporters of David? Yeah, it could be. So we have a very complex situation here. On the one hand, he cursed David. Judgment was not done to him. On the other hand, when Adoniyahu was pulling a rebellion, and it'll be the king instead of Shlomo, we saw who the people that are loyal, supporting David and eventually supporting Shlomo. One of the names is Shim'i. Wow. And if I tell you that when Shlomo started growing up, do you know he took to become his Rabbi? Do you know it's mentioned in Chazal, it's not in Tanakh. Shim'i ben Gera was the Rav of Shlomo. So we're in a very, very complex situation here. And the idea that Shim'i is part of Shlomo's Beit Midrash, okay? Even though on the other hand, Shim'i belonged to the house of Saul, to the house of Shaul. So you would think that what? Shim'i naturally is an opponent of David and an opponent of Shlomo. It's clear when Avshalom rebelled, Shim'i cursed with very sharp words against David. But we never saw him really joining who? He never joined Avshalom in the rebellion. He cursed David but did not join him. On the other hand, in verse 8 of chapter 1, we see who's the list of supporters of David? Tzadok, Benayo, Natan the prophet, and Shim'i. And one of the commentators said, it's not another Shim'i, but it's Shim'i what? Shim'i ben Gera. So, what do you do with someone that's supporting you, yet at the same time, he went up against your father?
Why did he curse his father?
There's always been competition between the house of Shaul, the tribe of Benjamin, and David. When David became king 7.5 years in Hebron, even before that, when Shaul was losing his kingship, when his kingdom was phasing out, we see that there were a lot of people that did not want to accept the house of Yehuda. And there was opposition, there was conflict between the tribe of Benjamin and the tribe of Yehuda. There was jealousy as well. So the question is, how do you want to bring a united nation? You want the people to love one another. So it's a very, very difficult situation, showing love to Benjamin, yet you're not getting support. Here Shimi ben Gera cursed David when David was running out of town, allowing his son to come in without shooting one bullet and take over the kingdom. David wanted to have shalom. Shimi ben Gera meets him and he curses him. So Chazal explained to us that Shimi was, it's a Gemara Masechet Brachot, Shimi was the king, the teacher, the Rabbi of Shlomo. And that explains to you why he doesn't do what? Shalom. Why does Shimi ben Gera not join Adoniyahu? Because he's supporting Shlomo. So you have a weird situation. Shimi cursed David. Shimi is the Rebbe of Shlomo as a youngster. Apparently he was the Rebbe in the Talmud Torah. And at the same time, Shimi now, what does he do? What does Shlomo, taking instructions from his Abba, how does he do away with Shimi? So that is a very, very difficult mistima, a very difficult job that's right now on Shlomo. How does he punish Shimi? It's not simple. Why? Because Shimi is faithful to him. Shimi is his Rebbe. But the fact is, David sees into the future. You can't trust some people like this all the time. He may go up against you. So David is clear. David suffered from the people that could have been supporting, went up against him. And David was soft, we said. He had mercy and compassion on those that opposed him. And Shlomo was commanded by David, take care of Shimi. Let's see what Shlomo does. Pasuk Lamed Vav, verse 36. Vayishlach HaMelech, Vayikra LeShimi. Well, why does he have to call him? Where does Shimi naturally living? In the tribal area of Benjamin. We saw in the book of Samuel that he's living in a place called Bachurim. We understood that when you go down Mount Olives and go down into the area towards the Jordan Valley, the Jericho Valley, and so on. So you come to an area there called Bachurim. That's a town of the tribe of Benjamin. So right now Shlomo is sitting in the heart of Yerushalayim, which is of then, city of David. And he's calling for maybe a few kilometers away, not so far. Please ask Shimi right now. Time is to take action. Vayomer lo, b'nei lachavayit b'Yerushalayim, v'yashavta bam sham. What is Shimi ben Gera in the Ministry of Housing? Does he, by the way, suggest this to Shimi? Or does he command him to do it? Notice the term, b'nei lecha, build, it's a command. Build for yourself a house in Yerushalayim. Wow. Why? And dwell there. Why? It's very clear why. We're going to see. V'lo tetzei misham anna va'anna. Don't leave this place, not this way or that way. So here, Shlomo starts the process that could take us several years to do what his father told him to do, to make sure that Shimi does not become a senior citizen. Make sure he doesn't take out Social Security and get rights as a elder statesman. Make sure he finishes his life earlier. That's limit number one. Limit number two, Pasuk Lamed Zayin, verse 37. V'aya, and it'll be, B'yom tzeitcha, when you do leave where? Yerushalayim. V'avarta et Nachal Kidron, and you pass the Kidron Valley, that is, we're talking now in between Mount Moriah and Mount Olives. We have a valley underneath. It's called the Kidron Valley. Leads into the city of David, to the Shiloach waters as well. If you pass that area, Kimot Tamut, you're going to die. Damcha yeh veroshecha. Wow, imagine a young leader like this. The blood will be at your head. So here it is. Let's ask two questions. Number one, why Oh, very good. Why bring him to Yerushalayim? Question one. And question two, what does the Kidron Valley have to do with anything involved in him? So let's answer one question. Question number one, prison. You're imprisoned in Yerushalayim. How will I know? Because I live in the king is in Yerushalayim. He can supervise, he can oversee. This is before closed circuit television, isn't it? He didn't have any closed circuit cameras watching him from a distance like we have today, B'ezrat Hashem. So number one, and the question is, do you feel imprisoned in Yerushalayim? Are there times that you never leave Yerushalayim?
First, when you say that you can't leave, so that's like psychological.
Beautiful, very good, excellent. When you're not decreed, you don't want to leave Yerushalayim. I know people don't want to leave it. They love Yerushalayim. They don't want to go anywhere for Shabbos outside the city. They love Yerushalayim.
Why?
Because of the holiness, the greatness, the spirituality, Machon Meir. However, when you're given a command like this, in this case, by the king, and you're told, afilu anna va'ana, to this way and to that way, then time passes, you start feeling a lacking. Wow, I'm limited, I'm imprisoned, okay? When you're told you're not allowed to leave, then your home may appear as a prison. Even if you have a beautiful home, even if you have, it's so spacious, the actual prohibition causes, one of my rabbis, Rav Mali, the Rosh Yeshiva of Yafo, he writes, when you have a prohibition, then it like causes strangulation. You feel so limited. Right now, you might aspire to leave all the time, okay? And if you have a good enough reason or justification, you'll even do it. Shlomo HaMelech is brilliant, as we're going to learn about his chokhmah in the next chapter's wisdom. Shlomo HaMelech knows no one but no one can overcome a limitation that he just will never leave. Either earlier or later, Mr. Shimi is going to leave Yerushalayim, okay? And therefore he'll be able to punish him and follow through the requirement of his father, King David, for what he did. But why should the Kidron Valley be a notation mark? Why is that important? Okay?
When David fled from Absalom, that passes through this valley?
Very good. You've guided your mind to what's stated in the Dat Mikra, the Dat Mikra series of Mosad Rav Kook. They give a logical answer. Do you not remember that when David fled Yerushalayim, when his son was doing a rebellion of Shalom, that he went through Nachal Kidron, went up to Mount Olives, and then went down and met in Bachurim. So this is the same path that Shlomo's father David traveled on en route to get out of the country, going east, where he was met with Shimi ben Gera, and Shimi cursed him there. So maybe it's some sort of midah keneged midah, a measure for a measure, okay? A measure for a measure. David passed Nachal Kidron and way getting out of the country during the rebellion of Shalom, and then Shimi cursed him. The same thing right now. If you pass through this area, then you're going to get it on your head for cursing my father then. Those are the instructions and the limitations. What about Mr. Shimi? Does he accept it or not? The question is, does he have a choice? Lamed Chet 38. Let's follow the Hebrew text. Vayomer Shimi lamelech tov adavar. Okay, I accept it. Kasher diber Adoni HaMelech ken yaseh avdecha. Okay? Whatever you said, I accept. Okay? There's no problem. I'm accepting it. Vayeshev Shemi b'Yerushalayim. He changes his address. He tells the postal system. Yamim Rabim. Some of you may know that the word Yamim doesn't only have to mean days. We learn in Vayikra 25 regarding the Shemitah and other things that the word Yamim can even mean years. Okay? Yamim Tiagulato, it appears there. The Gemara brings that in Mesachet Makot, whatever. So the word Yamim doesn't only mean face value days. The Tanakh is a sign language, and therefore the word Yamim can mean years. Can we prove it here? Yes. Remember, Who's writing the Sefer? Yirmiyahu. Yirmiyahu, Jeremiah, hundreds of years later, is putting this Sefer of prophecy together. So he certainly knows that Shimi lived several years, yet in his prophecy from God, he calls it Yamim Rabim, which, like we said, can mean years. Prove it. Next pasuk 39. Vayi miket shalosh shanim, at the end of 3 years. Vayivrachu shnei avadim l'Shimi. 2 servants. He was apparently a wealthy man. He has servants working for him in his house. Where did they escape to? El Achish ben Macha, Melech Gad, going south. One of the satellite cities of the Plishtim. Okay? Achish Melech Gad, the king of Gad. Vayigidu l'Shimi lemor. Shimi's told about the news. Hine avadecha bagat. Okay? Intelligence, information is told to him. Okay? After Shimi's been living several years. Okay? He now knows about the 2 of his servants. Apparently they're Plishtim people, otherwise why would they go there? I'm assuming this. Okay? And now he wants to get back his own 2 servants. They're worth very much. What is he thinking? That it's permitted. Now this is not an excuse. This is it's my resources. It's my monetary value. Maybe I'm allowed to go. I'm not coming to flee from Shlomo. What does he do? Pasuk Mem. Vayakom Shimi gets up. Vaychavosh et chamaro, saddles up his own chamor. He doesn't use anyone else. He does it himself. Vayelech Gata el Achish. He goes to the city of Gat, which is going south. Some say it's the area of Kiryat Gat today. And he's going to Achish, the king, this Plishtim king there. Levakesh Davadav. He's beseeching to get back his own servants. Vayelech Shimi, vayavet avadav migad. He's successful. He knows how to work. And he gets them back. And now he's on his way home. The message is clearly brought to Shlomo. Pasuk Mem Aleph, verse 41. Vayugad l'Shlomo. The information is told to Shlomo. Ki alach Shemi Yerushalayim Gat vayashov. Before we get to the decree of the king, what was the mistake of Shemi Begar? He's a shrewd person. He's not stupid. He heard the instructions. It was very clear to him. Yet, what did he think? I was told 2 things. Don't go this way, don't go that way, and don't leave Nachal Kidron. Okay? Has he left Nachal Kidron? He left Yerushalayim going, which direction? Southwest. Nachal Kidron is going east. So on the one hand, he thinks it's not forbidden because I didn't really leave. Why did he? Nachal Kidron is going into his area, to the Benjamin area, going east. He didn't go out of Nachal Kidron. So maybe that could be one mistake that he made. He thought that it's permissible to me to go east, to go west. And that's what he did. Another possibility, some of the commentators say, is if I'm leaving from my own personal matters, it's for me personally, it's forbidden. But if it's to bring my possessions back, to bring my wealth back, my 2 servants, maybe that will not be under the jurisdiction of this prohibition. And
He also thought that Kidron is in the kingdom of Benjamin.
That's right.
So maybe there was a chashash that he would go to Benjamin and he would make a revolution.
That's right. And now he's going to the Judean region. He's really going to the southwestern area of the tribe of Yehudah. So maybe that's not prohibited, like you said. Nonetheless, all Shlomo had to do is to create a context where he could find fault and bring about the death of Shimi. And maybe we're seeing here the shrewdness, the decision-making matters of Shlomo as a young king, and he's making the calls. Pasuk Mem Bet 42. Vayishlach HaMelech vayikra l'Shimi vayomer elav, and now he's brought to him and he tells him the following. Hello, which does not mean Hello. Hello, surely hishbaticha v'Hashem. Surely I swore in the name of God. Va'ed bech, and I warned you, Lamor, saying, B'yom tzeitcha, on the day you go out, v'alachta ana v'ana. If you do go out, you do it, surely you know, kimotamut, you're going to be a dead person. Before the response of reading of Shimi, was there really an oath? Did you notice in the instructions of Shlomo HaMelech to Shimi, was there an oath in God's name? People are asking that question. The Radak asked that question. The Mitzudat David asked that question. We don't see the mentioning of a Shavua, an oath of God. Yet the answer is a simple answer. Any order that a king provides is equivalent to an oath. The king of Israel is mirroring the presence of God in the world. Okay? He's parallel to the kingdom of God in the world. When God makes a decree, it's like an oath. It's solid. It's absolute. There's no bending. So too, the verdict of a king, the gzera, the decree of a king, it too is equal to a shavua, as if in a shavua in God's name. What does Shimi answer? Vatomer alai tova davar shamati. Okay? You said then, Vatomer alai then, meaning that you accepted it. Not saying it now. He's responding is, the king repeats or reiterates that you accepted this gzeira. And therefore he continues to speak, Mem Gimel umadua lo shamarta, why didn't you keep it? Et shvuat Hashem et mitzvah shetzivita aleh. Why didn't you keep my words? Pasuk. So what is the response of Shimi, gentlemen? It seems that in Pasuk Mem Daled 44, what do we read? Vayomer HaMelech El Shimi. I don't understand why it's written this way. Aren't we in the middle of a conversation between Shlomo and Shimi? Yes or no? Where did it start? In which Pasuk? It started in Membet in 42. So why is there a need for the Tanakh to reiterate Vayomer HaMelech El Shimi? Oh, I don't see a break here in the way the scripture is written. Do you have a break in your Tanakh? No, it's not there.
I get a feeling that Shlomo didn't really want to kill him. He had this order from his father, and when Shimi cursed his father, he was cursing the Malchut, which is like
terrible.
Probably Chayav Mitan.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right.
So,
but why do you?
And he's like saying, why did you do that? He doesn't have to ask why. You get it. That's it. Fact. Die.
So he wants to be as fair as possible in saying this was the decree. This is what you did. This is a violation. It's hard for him to do because he was a supporter of Shlomo, but he's doing it. He's now about to execute a decree of the king to have Shimei killed. It's not an easy decision, okay? But he's doing it. So I think that Shimei's just standing there and sitting there, hearing everything and not saying anything. He has nothing to say. He realizes that he's guilty. And we've said often in the name of our sages, Shtika kehoda'ah. When you're silent, it's equivalent to an admission. Shtika kehoda'ah. That's why I think in Pasuk Mem Daled, the king speaks again, because there's no response of Shimi. He hears everything. He's basically saying, I understand, you're right, I agree, I deserve death. And therefore, the king just finishes it off in Mem Daled 44. Vayomer HaMelech El Shimi, Ata yadat et kol harasha yada levavcha. You know all the bad things you did, and you know in your heart, Asher asita leDavid, that you did to my father. Ve'shiv Hashem eruatcha b'roshach. God has done this. This is the making of God. I know you made your decision of what you wanted to do, but this is God's decision. You are a result that you deserve justice. You deserve to be brought to death. And that's what's going to happen. As a result of this incident, which has not yet been finalized, the Tanakh tells us, as opposed to God bringing evil on your head, Memhei 45, we can read a contrast. V'hamelech Shlomo Baruch. What is the Tanakh trying to do here? What's the message? This is what Shimi did against my father, and now he violated my decree, and he deserves death. And now the Tanakh tells me in 45, V'hamelech Shlomo is Baruch? What is the Tanakh creating here? What is the Tanakh creating here? Shimi is understood in what realm? As someone that violated violations. We call that klala, a curse. Someone that does not stand by the demands of the king, of Hashem, that's a curse. On the other hand, maybe this pasuk is to contrast. Shimei violated this, and he deserves death. In contrast, the va here is but. But Hamelech Shlomo, he is what? Baruch. He is blessed. V'chisei David yeh nachon lifnei Hashem ad olam. And the throne of David, meaning the house of David, on the throne, is now continued by his son Shlomo. It'll be nachon. Nachon meaning established. Mitukan, corrected, established. By the king doing judgment, the value of the throne of Shlomo is now, it's being established. It's being strengthened. Why? Kisei David Yenachon lifnei Hashem ad olam. Everything is before the eyes of God. When Shlomo puts a verdict into execution, he's thinking of Hashem. He's thinking, I'm fulfilling my father's decree. I'm doing a mitzvah of Torah. I'm listening to my father. I feel that God's presence is in front of me. God is giving me siyata dishmaya, divine assistance. And by this divine assistance, the throne of David is now being more established. That's what Shlomo is doing. So we can summarize and say, Shlomo has gone through a very difficult trial. He's bringing what? Judgment. He's bringing justice to that name of David HaMelech. And by doing so, the throne is now being more established. He's a youngster. He's now getting rid of person number 2 that he has to do was first Yoav, the minister of the army, and now Shimi. The decree is given, Pasuk Memvav, verse 46, Vayitzav HaMelech et Bnei ben Yoyada. The king doesn't have to do the dirty work. Every person has a position. And there's someone doing his position, Benayahu, he's the head of the army. Vayetze goes out, Vayifgabo, he hits him, Vayamot, and he dies. A verdict of the king. As the Rambam says, a king is given the power by God to punish not according to the law of the Torah. Here we're not dealing with witnesses, no testimony, not the court, the Sanhedrin. We're not dealing with that whatsoever. We're dealing the din of the Malchut, the law of the king, the kingdom. He has a right to punish, not according to the laws of the Sanhedrin.
So it doesn't have to be according to one of the 4...
It could have been. Right, right. Arba mitot beitin. Right. There are 4 ways of capital punishment: skila, sreifa, hereg, and chenek. Stoning, burning, stabbing, and chenek is strangulation. Here it's likely that he was stabbed to death or something of that nature. We're not told. It's not that important. But what we're learning here is, let's finish the pasuk. What is the result of this execution? What is the result of this justice? The kingdom is now corrected, is proper in the hand of Shlomo. Why? David, as the king of Israel, we said it several times in our learnings here, was never on easy street. David, as the king, had opponents. There were people that were jealous, envy of his greatness. He had opponents. He had people that didn't even recognize that he's Jewish, because he comes from, what's his great-grandmother's name? Ruta Moaviyah, who said that her giur, her conversion is good. So there were always opponents to the mother. On the mother's side, he comes from his great-grandmother's Ruth.
Yeah, but she had parents who had...
You're right. But still, people said initially, he comes from a bad family. It was not recognized. The gear was not recognized. That put a lot of stain and pollution on the name of David. He had to compete. He had to live with those problems for years, generations. So here we see that Shlomo's kingdom right now is corrected. David had opponents. He had to live with them. He didn't do execution to them. He gave those instructions to Shlomo. Shlomo now has brought into fruition these executions. He's taking care of Yoav. He's taking care of Shimi. So right now there are no opponents. There are no enemies inside the house of Eretz Yisrael, the Am Yisrael. The opponents have been taken care of, and therefore Yirmiyahu paints a picture that the house, the throne of Shlomo, is now fixed, is now corrected. That's the end of chapter 2. Any questions? If not, let's begin Perek Gimel, at least as an introduction. Perek Gimel, Vayitchaten Shlomo et Paro Melech Mitzrayim. What? It says in your Tanakh as well?
Yeah.
Mazal Tov is a wedding. He marries. It says literally here, he's marrying Paro. What does it obviously mean? Look at the next part of the pasuk. Vayikach et bat Paro. Vayivea el ir David ad kaloto livnot et beito et beit Hashem et chomat Yerushalayim saviv. When we use the word, the verb in the Tanakh.
Actually, the bride's father, no?
Yes.
It's referred to the...
Right. When we talk about Vayikach in the Chumash,
Why?
I know it literally means and he took, but we're talking about halachic marriage. We learned it already, or halachic acquisitions to be more exact. Okay? The Talmud says, where do we learn about the acquisition of marriage? We learn it from the acquisition of the Machpelah cave, Kicha Kicha. The word Vayikach is written in Devarim and Deuteronomy, acquiring a wife, through the language to take. It means making a formal kinyan acquisition, a halachic way, a method of acquisition. So too, the acquisition or the purchase of the Machpelah cave in the city of Hebron, there too Vayikach is used. And the Talmud in Masechet Kiddushin on page 2, side 1, the first sugya, the Gemara there talks about a rule of learning from the oral Torah called a Gzeira Shava. What is it called? Right. A Gzeira Shava is one of the 13 rules of application, how the oral Torah deciphers the written Torah. Gzeira Shava is a common word in two separate passages. The law given in one. If I learn from my Rabbi, he learned from his Rabbi, all the way back to Moshe Rabbeinu, because we're not allowed to create a Gzeira Shava by ourselves. So just like marriage is through a formal acquisition, so too the purchase of Hebron, the Marata Machpelah. So the word Vayikach is a formal, technical way of acquiring. He married Bat Paro halachically. He brings it to Ir David. Ad kalato levnot et beito. During the entire period, he's building his palace. Vet Beit Hashem. For the entire period that he's building also the Beit HaMikdash, which seems to be coming second. And he also builds Chomat Yerushalayim, Saviv. Okay. Before we go further, to understand what's going on, we have to precede and say, without a doubt, that of the greatest kings the Jewish people ever witnessed and experienced is Shlomo Melech. This period of time is the grandiose period of time for the Jewish people, economically and spiritually and militarily. Okay? This is certainly the pinnacle of Jewish life, from many ways of life, as we see here. And we also know internationally, the borders of the land of Israel have reached all its peaks. What God promised Moshe Rabbeinu at Sinai, the greater borders of greater the land of Israel, they're certainly met. In a moment, we'll learn years later, the Beit HaMikdash will be built. The nation will be coming up to Yerushalayim 3 times a year. There's going to be quiet and tranquility. Yet, we're going to start learning about the kingdom of Shlomo Melech. And we know that the Torah, written Torah, talks about 3 limitations as far as the king is concerned. One is the amount of what? Horses. The other one is the amount of money, is silver and gold, and also the amount of wives. We never learn the Chumash just based on its face value. We certainly know that there's oral Torah to be explaining all these things. Okay? So, did Shlomo go to Talmud Torah at his young age? Shimi ben Gera taught him the Torah. How good was he in Talmud Torah? How do you know? So let's just share with you a few Gemarot regarding Shlomo Melech. There's a Gemara that appears in Midrash Rabbah Shir HaShirim that says, Amar Rabbi Yudin, to teach you that anyone that teaches Torah publicly merits divine inspiration to be inspired on him. And that's what Shlomo did. Shlomo taught Torah publicly, and he had Ruach HaKodesh, divine inspiration on him. Remember, Ruach HaKodesh is a level under Nivuah, under prophecy. Prophecy is the highest level. What does the Midrash say? How do we know that he had Ruach HaKodesh? Look at the 3 books that he authored. Number 1, Mishlei. Number 2, Kohelet. Number 3, Shir HaShirim. So it's clear that he taught Torah publicly and he merited Ruach HaKodesh. Another Gemara that talks about rabbinical injunctions that Shlomo enacted regarding Eruvin, the laws of Eruv, and regarding Netilat Yadayim, the washing of a hand. The Gemara says in Masechet Shabbat, page 14, I'm reading a bunch of sources my Rabbi, Rav Eli Mali from Yafo, brought here on this article. Ula says the name of Rabbi Eliezer. Rav Yudah, in the name of Shmuel, says when Shlomo enacted rabbinical laws of Eruvin and Netilat Yadayim, a batko, a voice from heaven came and said, Beni, im chacham libcha yismach libi. Okay? A pasuk that's brought, I think, from Shir HaShirim, or Mishlei, I think. My son, if your heart has wisdom, then my heart will be rejoicing. In other words, Shlomo had such great Torah knowledge that he was able not only to keep the Torah laws, but he even made rabbinical injunctions. So how do we deal with the subject of the women? Chapter 11. Let's return to chapter 11. Pasuk Gimel. Parakid Aleph. Pasuk Gimel. What do we see? It says here, Va'ilo Nashim Sarot. He had the amount of wives that were serving him for a certain purpose, Shva Me'ot, 700. Ufilakshim, a pilegesh, are those women that don't have a ketubah. Okay? No contractual conditions. Shlosh Me'ot. So you see the number here is astronomical. So did Shlomo or did he not transgress the Torah prohibition, quote, in Deuteronomy, Lo Yarbelo Nashim? He's not allowed to have many wives. How many can you have? Okay? So there are certain, if we read the famous Braita, it's actually a Mishnah in Masechet Sanhedrin. Okay? The Mishnah brings the pasuk from Deuteronomy Dvarim, quote, Lo Yarbelo Nashim, and the first opinion is 18, like you said. Rabbi Yudah says he can have as many as he wants, as long as they don't remove his heart from Torah and mitzvot. And Rabbi Shimon, the third opinion, says even if he has one wife, but she turns his heart away from Torah, he should not marry her. He should not marry her. So according to the first opinion, which is Tanakama, the anonymous opinion, the king is allowed to marry 18 wives, whether they're righteous or not righteous. He doesn't say anything. Whereas according to Rabbi Yehuda, the king can marry as many wives as he wants, under one condition, that no one turns him away, his heart away from Torah. Whereas the opinion of Rabbi Shimon, okay, even if those 18 wives are righteous, okay, that's not important. Because if one of them amidst the righteousness turns your heart away from Torah, or you're distracted from Torah, you're not allowed to do it. Who do you think in the Tanaic argument, thousands of years afterwards, how did Shlomo HaMelech learn the halacha? Apparently learned it like Rabbi Yehuda. He reasons that the king is allowed to marry as many wives as he wants, as long as what? That doesn't turn his heart away. And now we're going to have to talk about what reasons Shlomo married all these women, but that will be tomorrow. Same place, same station. Either be here
Will be a circus.
or be a circle.